Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to the United States Hispanic Business Council Arizona Town Hall. Our program is going to begin momentarily, so please find your seats, get a glass of water. It's going to be a wonderful conversation. My name is Sabrina Lilu Gonzalez, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Vice President and Chief of Staff for the United States Hispanic Business Council. Before our program officially begins, I would like to take a moment to thank the Lowe's for hosting us in your beautiful venue, and thanking each and every one of you for joining us today. We know that this is smack dab in the middle of lunch, and you chose to spend it with us, so thank you for that. With us this morning, we do have a few distinguished guests that I would be remiss if I didn't recognize. So we have the Honorable Dr. Richard Carmona with us, the 17th Surgeon General of the United States. We also have, yes. We also have Mr. Scott Anderson, Chairman for Zions Bank. Some even refer to him as the unelected governor of Utah, so. We have Mr. Don Salazar, Chairman for the USHBC. Mrs. Jane Garcia, a lifelong advocate, a leader for the Hispanic community, and also an advisory board member for the USHBC. Humberto Lopez, who's a philanthropist and founder of the H.S. Lopez Family Foundation. And, yes, another round of applause. And Patrick Robles, who is with Senator Ruben Gallego's team and representing as the Southern Arizona Director. Actually, we hope to host the senator soon, so no pressure. But thank you for being with us. The United States Hispanic Business Council is a nonpartisan organization committed to fostering collaboration across the political spectrum. Regardless of ideology or political affiliations, our goal is to reach across the aisle on key issues that matter to all Americans. Today's event will begin with a panel discussion featuring community leaders, practitioners, and experts. Following the panel discussion, we will be hosting a fireside chat with none other than Mr. Congressman Juan Ciscomani. The questions posed during the discussion have been carefully curated through submissions that each and every one of you have made during your RSVPs and different conversations that we have had as an organization with folks within the community. I want to remind everyone that today's event is not a debate. The objective is to facilitate a candid, insightful, and respectful conversation around these key issues. So we kindly request that the audience do remain silent throughout the program as it is being televised and live streamed. Today we will examine critical issues that drove voters to the polls in historic numbers. Across the country, Americans continue to grapple with rising cost of living, immigration challenges, and an economy that's in need of revitalization. And while we remain optimistic for the future, we know that conversations like the one that we're having today are critical to keeping these issues on the forefront. At the USHBC, we are committed to ensuring that the voices and the concerns and the opinions of Main Street remain on the main stage. Small businesses, the backbone of our country, have a lot of the solutions, have a lot of the insight that we need on the political stage. Equally important is engaging with the elected officials and the representatives who work daily to protect our interests and drive meaningful legislative change. So through open dialogue and collaboration, we believe that we can foster actual solutions to the problems that we're seeing today and truly build a more prosperous future for all. And so without further ado, to kick off our program, I would like to welcome to the stage our President and CEO, Mr. Javier Palomares.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. For starters, I always take the opportunity to brag on my staff. And how about Sabrina? I worry about my job some days when I see Sabrina in action. I had the pleasure of meeting Sabrina about 10 years ago. I was sharing with Dr. Carmona, and I said, General, I had the pleasure of meeting her 10 years ago when she came to address a crowd I was in. They had to fix the podium and put it like a little stand so she could reach the mic, and they did the mic, and she delivered one hell of a commentary. She was the recipient of a scholarship that the company on whose board I sat bestowed that year. And afterwards, the owner of the company brought her over and introduced her to me, and I was very taken by her. 10 years later, I called her and I said, hey, Sabrina, what are you doing? She goes, nothing, sir. I said, how'd you like to come work for me? She worked without a salary for 4 to 6 months. I worked without a salary for 2 years, I'd like to remind her, and she just recently decided to start paying me, so it's kind of nice now. But she runs the show. There's no question in this organization who gets things done. It's a young woman at the ripe old age. I don't know how old she is, but I think she's like 25. She joined the organization 3 years ago. A month later got married. A month later we moved her to Washington. A year after that, she moved back to Miami, and about 4 months ago, she had her first baby. So now I have another boss and another layer. So help me thank my chief of staff, Sabrina Gonzalez. That's the kind of talent that charges me up and keeps me really moving and going. And I don't want to pass up the opportunity to talk a little bit about a gentleman who made time to come out here and join us today. Dr. Richard Carmona was the 17th Surgeon General of the United States. He is a distinguished professor of public health, a military veteran, a law enforcement officer. And I told the staff, I said, guys, just narrow it down for me, because I'm not going to have a lot of time, but I can't not acknowledge this man. So just give me the basics and highlight like the really important stuff, just the important stuff. Highlight it for me. This is what I got. So I said, okay, so what, but let me just skip around a little bit. 17th Surgeon General of the United States, overcame early hardships, including homelessness, hunger. He became a nationally recognized medical and public health expert. He grew up in Spanish Harlem. He dropped out of high school. He enlisted in the U.S. Army, went on to become a medic in Vietnam, under fire. He won 2 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star. Later went on to the University of California, where he was awarded the prestigious gold-headed cane as the top graduate of his year, of his class. He is specialized in general and vascular surgery. He is the chairman of the Arizona Southern Regional Emergency Medical System, the chief medical officer and public health officer and CEO of Pima County's healthcare system. He has received a National Top Cop Award, the National SWAT Officer of the Year Award, and he has served in law enforcement over 35 years in the state of Arizona. Those are just some of the things that Richard Carmona has accomplished. And I am humbled that he made time, doesn't know me, but he made time to come join us today. So please stand and help me thank our special guest, Surgeon General Richard Carmona. Bet you didn't expect that, did you, General? And of course, Scott Anderson, our dear friend, chairman of Zions Bank. Scott was an early investor in our organization, financially and otherwise. When we didn't have anything, we didn't have a logo, we didn't have a website, I didn't have business cards, we sold him on an idea, and he promptly said, Javier, how much and where? And he's been with us steadfast since that time. Please help me thank Scott Anderson, our dear friend, for doing this. Our association would not exist if it weren't for the help of men like that. So with that, let me get to work, because Sabrina's already giving me the evil eye here. So thank you, Sabrina, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, fellow business builders, leaders, and Americans. My name is Javier Palomares, and I'm the president and CEO of the United States Hispanic Business Council. We are the leading advocate for America's Hispanic business community. We advocate for America's 4.5 million Hispanic-owned firms in this country that collectively contribute over $850 billion to our American economy every year. And while we're proud to advocate on behalf of men and women who happen to be of Hispanic descent, we never forget that we are first and foremost American business. And every tax bill we pay, every job we create, every product we manufacture, and every service we provide goes to benefit our American economy. So today's discussion is not just on behalf of the Hispanic community, but all communities and all Americans. Thank you for joining us today for what I hope will be a very engaging, enlightening, but simple conversation. An opportunity to allow your leaders to talk about policies and issues in their own words. But first, I'd like to take a moment and reflect on what else is happening today. Today is President's Day. While it may seem trivial to some, today serves as a stark reminder of the leadership, sacrifice, compromise, and bipartisanship that has created this great nation. It is an opportunity for us to continue to move forward as a nation in spits and starts, sometimes divided, sometimes united, but always one people, always Americans. With that, let me introduce our panel. As we continue our programming, I would like us all to approach the topics and discussions with the future of our family and our community squarely in mind. Let us find the common ground upon which we can build a better future for everyone. Today, we will be exploring the state of Arizona, specifically its relationship with immigration, its economy, and its role in national politics. As a critical swing state with 11 electoral college votes, a massive agricultural industry, and a growing and rich role in our nation's technological future, Arizona's role in America's future and our success is only going to grow. In order to garner a meaningful understanding of the issues that matter to you and the solutions that you seek and that you deserve, we've invited 4 members of your community to sit on stage with me this afternoon. These local leaders come from all walks of life, from a business owner to a chamber leader, to a border security expert, to an elected official. In other words, rather than hearing from us about your own community, we thought it best to talk to your neighbors. We're delighted to be joined by this amazing panel of leaders who volunteered their time to help us tell your story right here where you live. Afterwards, we will have a one-on-one discussion with none other than Congressman Juan Ciscomani, your congressman. With that said, let's get started with our panel. I'd like each of the panelists to make their way to the stage as I introduce you. First, we have Commissioner Leah Marquez Peterson. In 2019, Leah was appointed to the Arizona Corporation Commission by Governor Ducey, making her the very first Hispanic woman to serve in a statewide office in the history of your state. Leah was later elected to the commission in 2020, where she still holds her seat and has even served as chairman of the commission. Leah's entrepreneurial background spans from owning and operating her own businesses to supporting Arizona's small business community. In fact, Leah was recognized as the 2022 Hispanic Businesswoman of the Year by the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And she's earned many other accolades and awards for her leadership and influence, not only in Arizona, but throughout our nation. She holds degrees from the University of Arizona and Pepperdine University. Leah resides in Tucson with her family. Leah, welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me thank. Next, we have Michael Guyman. Michael is the president and CEO of the Tucson Metro Chamber of Commerce, your Chamber of Commerce. From working in local government for nearly 7 years at the Tucson Metro Chamber, Michael has been a steadfast champion for Arizona's small business community, working tirelessly to ensure entrepreneurs have the resources they need to thrive. I've had the pleasure of working with Michael on various occasions, and he's seen to it that the voice of Tucson and the voice of Arizona is heard on our stage at the national level. Over the years, he's fostered collaborative policies and programs that drive sustainable economy, growth, and partnership right here in your region. A proud University of Arizona graduate, Michael's dedication to local business development has earned him recognition across the state and nationally. He resides right here in Tucson with his family and continues to be deeply committed to creating opportunities for all of Arizona's small businesses. Michael, welcome. Next, we have Jason Winsky. As a board member of the Border Security Alliance and a law enforcement officer, Jason has dedicated his career to ensuring the safety of our border communities. Again, we've had the pleasure of working with the Border Security Alliance on various occasions, and we found the engagement to be very, very enlightening and very, very collaborative. Jason focuses on balancing the needs of local residents, law enforcement, and policymakers, bringing firsthand experience as a law enforcement officer that has witnessed himself the impact of illicit drugs and other substances that flow across your border. Jason firmly believes in fostering cooperation between communities and organizations and parties and government agencies to keep our borders secure while supporting economic growth. Jason, welcome to the panel. And finally, a caballero that I know very well. He's last but certainly not least. We have my friend Jonathan Lyons, local business owner and Yuma County supervisor. As a supervisor, Jonathan has planned and executed dozens of briefings on the border security issues and everything else that's happening between U.S. and Mexico. He has many times gone to Congress. He has helped administration officials. He has guided and offered counsel and advice to business leaders, law enforcement officers, and good old boys like me. Jonathan was raised in Yuma, where his family has been since the 1930s. He's also the president of a local roofing and insulation company. And while he's the chairman of BSA today, I want to talk to him as a business owner. In fact, Jonathan is the president of this roofing and insulation company that has been here for nearly 80 years. He served a 2-year mission in Argentina and Uruguay and speaks fluent Spanish. And he is the father of 11 children. So I'm thinking they don't get cell coverage where he lives. I'm thinking the television reception is not that great. I'm not sure. Pero caballero,
I better get back to work.
Caballero, con toda confianza, bienvenido. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our panel. Let's get started. All right. Let me turn this thing on. Are we good? Can you hear me? No. Can we check the mic and make sure?
There you go.
So this is a question that I would like everyone to answer. I want to jump right into it because let's face it, it's staring us in the face. Arizona sits at the nexus of immigration, border security, a rapidly growing economy. In fact, I think you were named number 3 in the nation for economic opportunity and development. And your economy, particularly the agricultural sector and now the technology sector, are growing rapidly, continue to grow. Now at the USHBC, we believe that immigration reform is an economic imperative necessary for the continued well-being of our American economy. However, we also believe that the identification and deportation of known criminals and those who are here to do us harm needs to be an absolute priority for our nation, all of us. To put this thing into perspective, despite the noise and the media, and I'm a Democrat, I have to admit that as of this point in his presidency, Donald Trump is deporting less people a day than Barack Obama did, than Joe Biden did. That's a fact. So with the media hype and what we're hearing and the facts and the people, the Americans who are living with these things day to day, having to grow your businesses, protect your families, grow your economy, serve the residents, I want to hear from you. what your thoughts are. What do you think that the mass deportations and the associated fear that comes from those deportations is doing to your community and to your economy? And I'll start with you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Javier. It's a great question. As I looked at my own community and as I spoke with different people around the state, at first there was a little bit of resistance to that type of presidential mandate that they actively seek out and return to their native countries those who had come here illegally. And many people who cross the border for lawful purposes on a daily basis were somewhat surprised by that. But in our subsequent conversations, it revolved around doing what's right, abiding by the law, and making sure that you're operating within that realm. I think that has been the primary message that I've tried to communicate with to anybody that I've spoken with who's had that concern. Focus on keeping the law, don't do anything wrong, don't stand out, and you shouldn't have any challenges. Now, I have several employees that cross the border on a daily basis and come to work in our construction company. They were.
How long has that been the case?
All of my life. I've never not depended.
So a good 21 years they've been crossing the border.
At least 21. I just turned 54.
And I can't help but wonder, Leah. You're obviously of Hispanic descent. Obviously, our roots, mine included, go back to Mexico. There's a great sense of pride for who we are and what God made us and all of that. But as a leader in the community, somebody who has to make that tough decision and the decisions have to be made. But more importantly, someone whose eye is on the commercial interests of this region, the economic interests of the region. The mass deportations, while they have obviously the civil rights and social element, it comes down to an economic impact. What are your thoughts around the mass deportations and the fear that it has, elicited amongst the Hispanic and Mexican community here in Arizona?
Yeah, I think this is I'm glad you're having this conversation here, Javier. I mean, we are a border state. We're living this day in, day out. The rhetoric you hear, whether it's in D.C. or in national press, we're living through it here in Arizona. I want to go back to the premise of your question. Support for immigration reform. We need that. What we have is not working, obviously. We need better border security. The policies that have been put forth by the Trump administration and the strong language used certainly has created a lot of fear, a lot of concern. We've lived through this before in Arizona. Many of us will remember SB 1070 and other issues that have come out, whether it be a state or federal government putting those forward, and you have that emotional reaction or the media reaction. We certainly don't want to see economic impact to the state, but bottom line, we have a system that's not working. We need to exit as quickly as possible those that have criminal intent in the nation, and we need to rely on our presidential administration and others to work on immigration reform. Ultimately, and I think from even the backgrounds of those of us here, we know we need workforce in this state. Jonathan has a roofing company. We need construction and ag and all different types of industries. And I think this is one step towards ensuring that we have, I guess, economic prosperity in the future. It's a complex question.
What are your thoughts around what's happening and the fear and the economic impact?
Yeah, comes down ultimately to perception versus reality. And there's the perception out there that's maybe fueled by a lot of the rhetoric. Like you talked about, the numbers are down comparatively, but the rhetoric seems to be up. And so from a perception standpoint, it's very strong within the community. My daughter went to a school and their tagline was, the difference is in the balance. I really don't know what that means for the school, but it does mean something to this. And the balance is the balance between making sure that we address the real border security that exists, but also the real need for individuals in our industries to grow and thrive. You talked about the burgeoning industries, and I know we'll get a little bit more into it later, but semiconductor industry, the construction, the battery factory that's going to open here in Tucson in the near future. Those companies need individuals, and so we need to make sure that we balance the real need for border security with the real need for immigration reform. We have a tech park here that is run by an amazing individual. She's Canadian. She does an incredible job, and so I embrace the need for finding that talent, no matter where it is, and making sure that we address the real immigration reform needed to get that talent for our communities.
I mean, I have to say, as a business person, politics aside, the reality of it is, this is a country that was founded by immigrants. 45% of the Fortune 500 corporations were started by an immigrant. And I mean companies like AT&T and Bank of America and eBay and Google and Verizon and yes, Tesla. Fast forward to where we are today, 83% of the agricultural sector is made up of immigrant labor. 35% of the construction is made up of immigrant labor. 22% of the STEM, the high-tech industry workforce is made up of people of immigrant background. 22% of all of the STEM patents that were filed in America were filed by somebody who was born elsewhere. So the reality of it is we need immigrants in this country. But with that said, Jason, there's also some security issues that are very real, and we hear about that. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts relative to the balance that Michael discussed.
Sure. There's no doubt that there's a humanitarian aspect to all levels of immigration enforcement, and we should be focused on that. But there's also a very real humanitarian aspect to the fentanyl, the drugs that are coming across our border, the counterfeit tobacco products. We have vapes that we know are being processed through China, coming across our border, and these are things that are hurting our communities every day. I've been in law enforcement in this community for 20 years, and these are what I see. There's hysteria that you see on Facebook about immigration enforcement, but out on the street and in our communities, what we really need to keep focused on is these products that are coming across our border, the illicit trade, the fentanyl in particular. A fentanyl pill in Pima County costs 50 cents. That's killing people in our community today. We need to keep the focus on.
Let me move on to the second question. Michael, I'll take this one to you. You've championed small businesses for years. At this critical time with the onslaught of new legislation coming from Washington, still high interest rates, and a new and aggressive set of tariffs, and potentially, very, very real potential for supply chain challenges that are kind of looming on the horizon if these tariffs continue. What do you see as the most pressing challenges that Arizona businesses are facing? And how is the chamber getting ready to support these small businesses with the onslaught of everything that's going on?
Yeah, thank you for that. So here's where I'm going to start. The Tucson Metro Chamber is about to merge with Sun Corridor. Sun Corridor is our economic development organization. So overnight, we're doubling our staff, we're doubling our revenues, we're doubling our resources. But I can tell you, because Sun Corridor focuses on attracting companies to Tucson, the chamber is here to make sure that those businesses that are here, both small and large, grow and succeed. And having that under one roof is going to be very, very powerful. But all of the conversations that we have, no matter if it's a company coming from somewhere else or a company that's already here, workforce is top of mind, making sure that we find the people for those companies. And we're also in a kind of a unique space where there is a real birth dearth here in Pima County, where we have fewer people being born than those that are passing away. So we need net new migration coming into this county. And that's done in a variety of ways. Immigration reform could be one of those, but it is all about workforce. And as far as making sure that we address the small and large business issues, we just want to stress the symbiotic relationships that exist between small and large businesses. Small businesses are sometimes the customers of the large businesses. They're the vendors, they're the suppliers. The large businesses, especially those that export their products, are paying their employees really good wages, and those employees then spend money in the small business community. So we're there to promote that. And it's just really exciting now that we are having all those conversations about our community's competitiveness under one roof.
Yeah, I think keeping that ecosystem squarely in mind is probably the best way to go. Jonathan, I'll move on to you for a bit more detail. As I mentioned earlier, you're both a county supervisor, but you're also a business owner. And you understand the relationship between immigration and critical American industries, again, construction, manufacturing, and even STEM. Those very same industries that frankly bring Arizona to the forefront of America's economic growth, if you will. What are you hearing from your own employees or the employees of your friends' companies? What are other business owners talking to you about? What's it like right now, given everything we're seeing, everything we're hearing? What are the conversations that you're having to have with your employees and your friends who own their companies are having to have with theirs?
Well, that's a fun question, just because I anticipated some of these challenges several years ago and actually participated in a voluntary program with ICE where they came in and did a 5-year audit to go back and look at our records so that we could come forward and be a leader in the construction industry, saying that we had employed the best hiring practices. We took that throughout the construction industry within Yuma, but then it also evolved into what we've done in the agricultural community. Now, Yuma, plug for our agriculture, generates $4.6 to $4.8 billion worth of produce on a yearly basis. And that is, if you have a salad from October through April, it was grown in Yuma, Arizona. 3.9 is directly attributable to the field, to the organization that lives there. Our agricultural community took it upon themselves to self-regulate. They also anticipated this, and so we have the best hiring practices in the area. Luckily, we have not had to have a hard discussion on whether or not to scale up business or whether to scale down. They've been able to do the right thing from the beginning. I know that's not the case in other areas where I have had complaints, especially in the interior of the United States, where, especially in construction, didn't have anybody show up for work, or nobody showed up to work in the restaurant. But I propose that if you do it right from the beginning and you make sure that you use best hiring practices, that you won't have to worry about it later on in life.
So it can be done, that balancing act is possible.
100%.
It's funny you mentioned agriculture, because I had the opportunity to work with the Texas International Produce Association, and they enlightened me that I think the last numbers they had for 2023, in 2023, America threw away 10 million tons, not 10 million pounds, 10 million tons of produce and fruits and grains and corn and so forth, because they simply didn't have the hands to harvest.
Yeah.
And he said, now fast forward to where we are today, imagine the impact that this is going to have on our workforce. So it really is serious for the agricultural industry. This is a serious threat.
May I add, Javier, that just because of the challenges around net new migration, similar to what we're seeing in Tucson, the farmers have had to look towards an automated process, and AI has played a very important role so that they could deploy directly into the fields to make up for the loss of labor. Our labor contractors are having to go deeper into Mexico to look for qualified individuals that can come across the border, but we haven't really addressed the H-2 visas for over 50 years. So there's a deficit in our management of our business community for the entire United States because we have not addressed that. Gang of Eight had a proposal, but you go back to, I think it was the Jordan Commission in the 90s. They put forth some ideas and suggestions on what might be done to facilitate the process. But going back to 1876, we've kicked this ball around and we have not landed where we need to land so that this country can continue to grow while maintaining border security and national security. And we always have that ebb and that flow and that constant battle around immigration.
And I hate to admit it as a Democrat, but I have been working for years, maybe 10, to try to increase the allotment of H-1B visas. And the guy who came to the rescue probably 8 years ago and continues to work with me on this, none other than Ted Cruz, about as Republican as you can get in Texas. And this administration and President Trump saw fit to make sure that America recognized that he believed that that visa should be protected, that we should be careful with that visa. And so it was not kind of put on the chopping block as some other visas might have been. I was delighted to see that. We were very gracious in pointing out that this president, we thought, had done the right thing when it came to that visa, because a critically important visa. And I think we actually have to look at getting a larger allotment, more of those kinds of visas, because we need them. Thought for that?
Especially because Ted Cruz might be advocating for the cattle industry, whereas I would be advocating for the agricultural industry, and those visas are not handed out fairly.
Yeah. I'm going to move on now, Jonathan.
All right.
Well, I didn't see that boomerang coming, bro. Thanks a lot. Okay, so Leah, you've been recognized as the 2022 Hispanic Businesswoman of the Year. Congratulations, first of all. The United States Hispanic Chamber did the right thing. So you know a little bit about the environment that is necessary to start and to grow a successful business. You also reside and operate in a state that is ranked 3rd overall in the nation for economic outlook and 7th overall for small business growth. So as both a commissioner in the Arizona Corporation Commission and a proven business owner, what are the policies that you think this administration should be looking at and focusing on to ensure that this kind of business growth continues, in fact, is spurred on? Can you share some thoughts as to what you'd like to see coming from Washington?
Sure. I think regardless of who is in leadership, we always need to lessen the administrative burden on the small business community. I know I formerly owned a chain of gas stations. I had a business brokerage firm. I ran our Tucson Hispanic Chamber for about 10 years. And that message really resonated with me in all different industries. So today, what can be done, I think, is support for our Small Business Administration. I'm blessed to serve on the National Advisory Board for the SBDC, Small Business Development Centers. And they provide business coaching, they provide assistance to small businesses, but we need to ensure that not only are small businesses aware of how to grow and scale, but also that they can achieve the lending that they need. I'm glad to hear you've got bank support here with your organization, and we need more banks to be focused on SBA lending and small business policies that can help them grow and scale. And I think the leadership from the top down really influences that.
Well, you mentioned small business lending, and I'm going to embarrass Scott, but Zion's Bank, in terms of net size, ranks about 39th in the nation, but it ranks number 2 for small business lending. So that's a guy that's going way the hell out of his way to make sure that small businesses are being taken care of. So I earned my keep there, didn't I, Scott? I thought that was pretty good.
Nice plug.
I didn't even see it coming. It's natural.
There you go.
So Michael, on to you. Arizona's economy is diversifying into high tech and other cutting edge industries. And I think a lot of other states are kind of like raising an eyebrow, if you will. In fact, I think it's AZ Big Media referred to the state as being on the cusp of a technological renaissance, I think is what they said. It looks like there's multiple data centers that are about to be built, semiconductor plants that are about to be built, several billions of dollars each of these projects. So my question is, what is the Tucson Metro Chamber doing, Michael, and what is needed? What is needed from elected officials to attract even more investment in those industries of tomorrow? Michael, sorry.
No, that's fine. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going through this merger. So Sun Corridor, the group we're merging with, so I guess I maybe now can say it was our event. No, I really can't. But over the summer, brought in Jeronimo Gutierrez Fernandez, who was once the Mexican ambassador to the U.S. And the reason for bringing him in to speak was solely focused on the greater connection that we need to make with the state of Sonora and with Mexico in general. We all know on this stage, and we all have great stories, and I've talked about the need to much more greatly establish that relationship, that I think is going to be our future. And I'll just kind of tell a story. I was recently in San Diego. So whenever I go to other cities, I try to meet with the CEO of the chambers there just to kind of pick their brain on issues that are facing their communities. So I met with Jerry. Now, Jerry was a former mayor of San Diego. He was former police chief of San Diego. He's now the chamber CEO. I don't have that resume. But it was a great conversation because San Diego, if you put San Diego and Tijuana together, it is the largest bioscience industry in the world. And it's because of that relationship that they have. It's because of, it's more than just the proximity, right? It's the companies that are doing the R&D on Genesee Avenue and Torrey Pines Boulevard in San Diego, then having the production being done in Tijuana and the final assembly and distribution being done in San Diego. We need to do more of that. So again, the reason we bring in Mr. Gutierrez Fernandez is because we want to, and we are going to be creating a report and a recommendation on how we can do that, how we can replicate that with Sonora. That is going to be our advantage. And we can do this in advanced manufacturing. We can do this in the semiconductor industry. We can do this in the new technologies that are coming down, AI, whatever it is. But we need to make sure that we're establishing that relationship because it's going to be strong and it's going to make our region unique. And that is going to be a piece of how we can further attract companies to our region.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Mike. So Jason, now on to you. The increasing complexity of the border, all of the related issues, the challenges, and the opportunities, but certainly the challenges, ranging from human trafficking, drug trafficking, illicit tobacco. It is creating an emergency at the national level. It's gotten to the point that long ago it was an emergency. What do you believe law enforcement needs in terms of resources to truly tackle this challenge, which is only growing? And what kind of policies do you think we need that will be effective to finally get our hands around the cartels and, frankly, how China is manipulating those cartels to get into our market?
That's a great question, and it is really complex. Because if you had told me 20 years ago when I started my law enforcement career that I would be seeing drug products, counterfeit tobacco products, literally marketed in bubblegum flavor, right? I mean, this is clearly targeted to the children of our community. That is a crisis. That's completely unacceptable. And we know that, the chemicals that make these vapes and the drugs themselves, phenols themselves, there is an international nexus to that. It comes south of our border where it's manufactured, and it comes across. And I think what I would say to answer your question is we need our Border Patrol and our customs officials, our ICE officials, doing what their job is. We need them at the border stopping these products, these drugs from coming towards us. They've been distracted, quite frankly, over the last 4 years with other roles and other assignments. That's not what we need them doing. We need them doing the job that they signed up for, the job that they want to do, and the job we need them to do, which is be at the border and protect our communities.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Absolutely. And at the United States Hispanic Business Council, we're a business council, but we happen to think that the greatest economic asset, the greatest commercial advantage that America has is our children. And for us, we take an insane focus on issues that impact children. It kind of sounds a little bit counterintuitive for a business association, but if you do the math, according to the Department of Labor, 78% of the net new entrants into the American workforce will be Hispanic over the next decade. So 78% of the new American workers will be Hispanic. But if our community is constantly under attack, and you mentioned vapes, that's a particular issue for me. I've actually gone, my team, which actually gets away because they look like kids when they go purchase these things. You can purchase them anywhere. There's no identification of any sort necessary. You buy a pack of cigarettes, you have to provide an ID. You have to prove you're over 21. Oftentimes it's behind the counter, it's locked, plexiglass, But if you go buy a vape, they're readily available. They're even placed at a lower level so a child can see them. And the flavors include sugar pop and watermelon candy, and they have unicorns and teddy bears. And if you look at the labels, and we've gone to congressional offices all up and down Washington, and we've shown them to members of Congress, it literally says, not to be sold in China. They're sold only in America. They're created in China, moved through the cartels, and sold to our kids in America. And I'm going to ask the congressman the same question. The consequence, the result, smoking vapes amongst our kids aged 12 to 18 has gone up 2,100%. That's an epidemic. That's the future of our nation. We need to protect them against these vapes, and I'm glad you guys are on the case. So last question, and this one applies to all of you. And this is one of my favorites. I want each of you to look directly at the camera, and I want you to keep your responses, 30 seconds or so. And if there was one thing you could tell the President of the United States, if there was one message you could deliver to President Donald Trump, I want you to look at the camera and give them that message from you. And I'll begin with you, Michael.
Well, hello. There's an old saying, and it's been attributed to many people, all politics is local. And so that is what we do here at the Tucson Metro Chamber, at their merged organization that we're going to do, focused on local issues, focused on making sure that our companies here have the tools to grow and succeed. And so any way that the administration or the state or local officials can assist us in making sure our companies continue to grow and succeed, that is what we are focused on, and that's what we could use help with.
Excellent. Young fella, you're up.
I'm going to throw a curveball here, so I'm going to say, come here. Come to our communities. Take a border tour with Jonathan over in Yuma. Hang out with the Tucson sector. Send members of your administration, which I know the president has. Look at what's happening here on the border, like here where the men and women of our Border Patrol are doing their very best every day to do the job they signed up for. They're very passionate about their job. Continue engaging with us on a local level. Show up, be here. That means a ton to law enforcement, the physical presence of our elected officials.
Excellent. And I'll tell you, we did one of these in Laredo, Texas, and we were talking to Ted Cruz, and I asked him to do the exact same thing. And he said, at the time it was President Biden, he said, President Biden, come down to Texas and see what bad border policy looks like to the American people having to deal with it here. He said, it's not a Republican issue, it's not a Democratic issue, it's an American challenge. Come down to Texas, Mr. President. Now, President Biden, they had been calling on him to come to the border for months, and he had not come. 72 hours after Ted Cruz did that, Joe Biden unexpectedly showed up at the Texas border. So you never know, fella. You may get Donald Trump down here. Okay, Leah, your turn. Look at the camera, and what's your message for President Donald Trump?
Our federal debt has exceeded $36 trillion. So I understand the importance of even the disruptive activities that have happened recently focused on the cost that the federal government has grown to, has ballooned to. I understand that this is disruptive. I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's scary for the American people, but I think this is necessary, and we need to let this play out. And I want you to continue the work at tackling that national debt.
And young fella, you're bringing up the rear as usual. A ver, ¿qué le dice el presidente?
I had the opportunity, Javier, to be with the president shortly after he was elected the first time as a representative of Arizona, as the GOP chair, and I delivered the same message that I'll deliver today. Please come to the border. He did subsequently. It was within 3 or 4 weeks, and he's come back several times to observe Yuma specifically and the challenges that we have, especially with the cartels. With Sonora and Baja California. The murder rate in Sonora is off the charts. We have an amazing region, but we need to take control back from the cartels. I appreciate everything that he's done in the first, 29 days There's a lot more to do to secure the border and secure our national security. We have 2 military bases. We haven't even discussed the impact to our national readiness that has been reduced somewhat because of people coming across the border, walking into live fire exercises. We've got lots of challenges. We need to be able to confront them head on. National security is first and foremost. I want my children to be able to stay in that community. I love it. I love the region. I love my state.
So are you inviting the president to come back down to Tucson, Arizona, Jonathan?
No, I'm inviting him to come to Yuma. Come back to Yuma, Mr. President.
Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap. Please stand and help me thank our great panelists for making time for us today. Thank you guys very much.
Okay.
We are going to transition to the next portion of our panel discussion. Portion of our program, and that is going to be the fireside chat with Mr. Congressman Juan Ciscomani. Thank you again for being with us. We are delighted at the conversations that we've already had, and we are excited that the Congressman has made it out here today. On behalf of the United States Hispanic Business Council, we would invite you all to learn a little bit more about our organization. So you can check us out at USHBC.com. And we also want to encourage you to sign up for our free membership program. We offer insights via our surveys, legislative updates, and different small business policy issues that we want to make sure that you are keen on. And so if you want to know a little bit more about that, that's at USHBC.com/join. We make it real easy for y'all to remember that. So as we get ready, wow, the microphone does not like me today. As we get ready to transition to the next portion of our program, we invite you to get a little cozy, get up from your seat for a moment, grab a glass of water, and our program will resume in about 2 minutes. She's just running to the bathroom. Can we close that door in the back when we get a moment? Hi. We are gearing up to resume our program, so we invite you to take your seats. Please find your seats. Our program is going to begin momentarily. And so the moment we've all been waiting for. We are delighted to host none other than Congressman Juan Ciscomani. So please join me in welcoming our President and CEO, Javier Palomares.
They're going to keep the old horse running today. I have the distinct, really pleasure.
Yeah, I know.
Of introducing
Well, first of all, she's not listening.
this gentleman.
She cares enough about this event.
And our mics are live.
We're convincing her to join us tonight.
I have the distinct honor
One of those things
of
that
introducing someone who
all the
has
family
quickly
thinks
become a
It's
prominent
now.
new voice in the Republican Party
Yes. It's normalized.
and a leader shaping the future of our country. He's a father, he's a husband, an elected leader, and a pretty good football coach, I'm being told. That's, of course, Congressman Juan Ciscomani. Congressman Ciscomani's story is the very embodiment of the American dream. Born in Mexico and raised right here in Tucson, Arizona, he understands firsthand the challenges and the opportunities that come with living along our southern border. His journey, beginning as a child that was taught the value of hard work and dedication, has led him to commit his life to public service, ensuring that others have every chance to succeed in life and to thrive just as he did. Before he was elected to office, the congressman worked his way through school as a maintenance man and in other service jobs. And he eventually became the first member of his family to graduate from college. After college, Juan worked for the University of Arizona and the Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce before joining Governor Doug Ducey's administration, where he led the Arizona-Mexico Commission. Here he championed economic development and innovative policies to attract businesses, create jobs, and strengthen Arizona's competitiveness. In Congress, he's carried those same ideals to the national stage, advocating for secure borders that balance security and humanitarian concerns with economic and commercial interests, not only of Arizona, but the entire nation. In just a very short time, he's earned a reputation for being accessible, results-driven, effective, and fiercely committed to finding workable solutions. Congressman Ciscomani is an up-and-coming star in the GOP, but he represents a new generation, a generation of leadership that blends traditional conservative values with forward-thinking visions for America. His dedication to family, entrepreneurship, and education resonates deeply with Americans who look to him for pragmatic governance. A principled leader who has illustrated the rare quality of bipartisanship. He has put partisan politics aside and illustrated the courage, frankly, to cross the aisle and work with Democrats like me, always in an effort to create common sense, meaningful legislation for the benefit of all Americans. Juan Ciscomani has illustrated to me that a real leader does not allow a wishbone to grow where a backbone should. Today, you can applaud for that. Today, as he steps more fully into the national spotlight, Congressman Ciscomani will offer fresh perspectives on the nuanced issues of immigration and economic growth, topics that reverberate far beyond the boundaries of this wonderful state. We are thrilled to have him here for a one-on-one conversation where he'll share his vision for both Arizona and America's future. Please, ladies and gentlemen, stand and help me welcome your representative, your congressman, Congressman Juan Ciscomani.
Yes, finally made it.
Good to have you here.
Laura just texted me and she asked, "Who's Javier talking about?" I thought she was supposed to introduce. I thought he was supposed to introduce you.
Well, between Laura, his wife, and Sabrina, our chief of staff, that's the way world actually works.
Yeah,
We have to
yeah.
ask. But it's wonderful to finally get this thing done. We've been
Absolutely,
trying to
man.
do it for quite a while.
Thank you.
Delighted to have you here. So, let's get started with kind of the questions that are on everybody's mind.
Yeah.
Literally this morning in the news. It's important, I think, for my association, and I think the people of Arizona, frankly, the people of America, to hear from you, what are the things that are keeping you up at night? As I mentioned, and Sabrina mentioned to the crowd, that this is not a debate. This is a conversation amongst two people who want to see, the best of America. And by the way, I think you represent that. I think you represent
Thank you.
the future of our politics in this country. And so, to start things off, I want to dive right into the complex issue of immigration reform. You and I have had these conversations before. But you've taken a bit of a different tack, which has been very successful. And you did it right out of the gate. You've advocated for a bill-by-bill approach that addresses the three key categories of security, immigration, and common sense. I'm sorry, commerce.
Trade, yeah.
And I think you've referred to them as buckets of these three concerns. That was very different than anybody else I've been talking to in DC for quite a while. Everybody wanted this huge, sweeping, comprehensive approach. You came in practically out of nowhere and said, no, let's eat it. Advocated for this bill-by-bill approach. So my question is to you, why do you believe that comprehensive legislation route has not worked? And secondly, what kind of momentum can we help you build for this bill-by-bill approach that you're advocating?
Great. Well, I think that's a great way to start this. Thank you for being here. This is an amazing community that I have the pleasure of representing, and the U.S. Hispanic Business Council has been a great partner here as well. So thank you, Javier. And so I think that's a great way to start this. And many of us here understand this firsthand. Many for their profession, but also I think most of us here just for the fact that we're living in this area and we know exactly how to tackle the three buckets. And you're right. That's what I started calling it when I first got to Washington. This was a new concept, or at least a new way to express it. I think people knew pieces of it, but when I got there, I said, I see this, and maybe a little bit of oversimplifying it, but it's in three different buckets. You've got immigration. That's a process of getting here. That's a process of coming into the nation, pursuing whatever it is that you have desire here, a work visa, a student visa. For some, maybe a green card. Others, like my family, pursuing the American dream and staying here as citizens. Whatever it may be, that is one area and bucket of the immigration side. And then you've got another bucket, the trade and the commerce. This is for Arizona. Mexico's our #1 trading partner. For the U.S., it's the same thing. Canada, #2. So our North American partners are our top trading partners in job creation as well. That's not even including tourism when you measure the $20 billion of trade and commerce. So you've got that. And then you've got security. The really bad actors, the ones that are trafficking people in fentanyl and that want to harm our nation in so many different ways. What I saw in Washington as soon as I got there is it was like two extremes. Either people lived only in one of those buckets and they refused to see the value of the other, meaning that they wanted all immigration, only focusing on families that are coming here and ignoring the security side, or focusing solely on the security side and ignoring the other aspects of what the border, why it can be an asset to a lot of communities like ours. It was either that extremes or just an all-comprehensive approach. So brings me to my point. What the comprehensive approach has been tried for decades at this point, and it keeps falling short, either very short or just about. But the fact is that nothing has improved, nothing has changed. And you continue to have Washington politicians talking in circles and loving the discussion and loving the working groups and loving the big bill and all that goes through, only for the thing to fall flat at the end. I think we are not closer now than we were 10 years ago to find a solution on a big comprehensive bill. Is that ideal, and is that something that we would want to do and we should never give up on? I'm with that. And there are talks right now of these kind of bills that I'm in the room having those discussions. But I can't wait for that. I don't have time for that. I think this notion of going to Washington and expecting to be there for generations and decades, and maybe one day you'll get a bill through, that's not what you all want, I think, and that's not what I want either. So as soon as I got there, I said, we need to bite this in different, take this in different bites, and introduce different bills that have smaller wins, but they actually move the needle. They actually advance. And one example is the week before we left, one of those bills for me was passed. It was the Raul Gonzalez Officer Safety Act. What this does is that it tackles the high-speed chases. Thank you. Thank you. Well, the thing about this bill that I think people should know about is it passed with every Republican voting for it and also 50 Democrats voting for it. So imagine this, right now in Washington, with how divided everything is, a border security bill gets passed with bipartisan support, and not by 1 or 2 bipartisan votes, but by 50 votes from Democrats on this. That tells you that there's some common sense approach that we can take here that will drive this agenda and actually get things done. In the Senate, Senator Ted Cruz from Texas is leading the effort on this bill, and the president has, the White House and the president have already signified that they have interest in this bill. So this has a very, very good chance of becoming law. And again, that's one bill, one aspect of one of the buckets, sure, but it moves the needle, something that Washington hasn't done in a long time.
Yeah, no, I gotta say, it's nuanced, and I think when I first heard, I thought, I wonder if that'll work. And
yeah,
and it's a very good point you made about 50 Democrats, not 3 or 5,
yeah,
but 50. By the way, you mentioned Ted Cruz. I spoke to him over the weekend. He said to say hello.
Yeah.
I spoke to Henry Cuellar this morning. He said to say hello. And Rob Menendez last night. He said to say hello. I got to get a photo of these socks so I can send them down to the guys. This thing here.
What are these, man?
These are old man socks.
Yeah.
Bro, evidently. Man,
The Costco crew socks, the $7.99 for 15 pairs.
Yeah.
Mine are in that bucket though. I have, these are my nice socks. These are I bust them out only in special occasions.
I don't know if I should salute. I'm not sure what to do. All right, on to our next question. I want to talk about a bill that you co-sponsored, the Laken-Riley Act.
Yeah.
The first bill, by the way, that President Trump signed into law. This bill garnered support again from a number of Democrats, not beating your record. It only had 46.
Yeah.
And it had 12 Democrats in the Senate.
Yeah.
The Laken-Riley Act requires the Department of Homeland Security to detain certain undocumented immigrants who have been arrested for burglary, theft, larceny, or shoplifting. So this is the right kind of common sense stuff we should be seeing. So the question is, do you think the passage of the Laken-Riley Act signals a new era of bipartisanship between yourself and your Republican colleagues and your counterparts on the left side of the aisle?
I do. And I've been working on this, on the effort of passing things that make sense. And when you do that, you get the bipartisan support. Everyone likes a bipartisan bill. But when you aim for something to be bipartisan, just for the sake of being bipartisan, things can get lost there because you have the wrong angle to it. My angle on how I've passed bills on bipartisan basis. And last year, when the rankings came out, I was ranked the most bipartisan member in Arizona. It's not because it's the bipartisanship that you're seeking. It's a common sense that you're seeking. There's real solutions that have real consequences. And when you do that, I think that attracts people from both sides of the aisle to come in and support something like that. In the case of my bill, I don't think we went into it. This tackles the high-speed chases that we're seeing, where it's not a federal crime for the drivers, the smugglers, that in many cases, in most cases, are actually U.S. citizens, to not yield to federal law enforcement. That was unreal to me to realize that was the case. So we went out and we said, I went out to the community. I didn't go to a think tank. Nothing wrong with that, but I didn't go to Washington to look for answers. I went to Cochise County and I met with the stakeholders there, and I said, if you had the chance of one bill, me immediately to tackle one bill, this is early in 23, I said, what would it be? And this was the just whelming support of something like this that would help federal law enforcement, local law enforcement, and innocent bystanders that have been hurt by this. Is named after an officer in Texas, a Border Patrol agent that was killed, but also innocent bystanders have died through these high-speed chases. So it was common sense. And where was the solution found? It was in Cochise County. I went there, asked questions, listened, and acted. I mean, I don't know that there's no, there isn't a, it's not a complicated formula. You go, you ask questions, you listen, and you act on them. So that's how we did that, and that's why it garnered the bipartisan support. This was also another example of that. If you've got people here that are on temporary basis, they're trying to earn their status in this country, like many of us have, including myself. I think you covered it. Immigrated when I was a kid, become a citizen in 2006, and then in 2022, I get elected to Congress. I believe in the opportunities this nation offers, in the American dream. I also know that we have to earn our way here. And does the process need to be updated? Absolutely, no question about it. But when you've got people here on any kind of temporary status and they're here committing crimes of whatever level, that's not the best way to show that you want to be part of this nation and that you are a good fit to be an American citizen or a resident one day. So if people are here committing crimes, that's what that tackles right there, that we need to get involved immediately, and that's where the removal of the country comes in. Again, makes sense. 46 Democrats voted for that, and in the Senate, 12. That's a big number too, because some were even co-sponsors of that.
Yeah, no, that's unlike things I've seen happening very quickly. And you have a lot of the credit is due to you, because you started this thing going in smaller pieces, but let's just show progress.
Yeah.
So amazing. So we are all aware of the fentanyl that is manufactured in China.
Yeah.
It makes its way to the cartels in Mexico and then across our southern border. And while the spotlight rightly continues to be on the alarming impacts of fentanyl, you and I have discussed how the cartels are in fact diversified multi-billion-dollar enterprises that are involved in a variety of things, from human trafficking. Let me see if I can figure this out. From human trafficking to fentanyl, to knockoff retail goods, to counterfeit medicine, to illicit cigarettes, and even vapes. And as you know, I tend to focus a lot on the things that are impacting children. And so I have a really strong focus on this vape issue. It is deliberately targeting our children with flavors like candy pop, watermelon candy, Skittles, obviously aimed at our children. And you and I have discussed, you're a father of 6. Fentanyl usage amongst our children has gone up some 2,118% in the last handful of years. So my question to you is, what are we going to do about all of these things that the cartels are pushing into our society? And particularly, how can we protect our kids from things like vapes and fentanyl and everything else? What's your view?
It really is a tragic situation that we're seeing. We just saw here, when was it, last week? Biopsy report came. Mansfield middle school student died with a fentanyl overdose here, right by the University of Arizona. It's a middle school there. Everybody knows, where that school is. You hear these cases on the fentanyl side that are tragic. And what you're seeing now with vaping or even other I would say lesser drugs than fentanyl is that they're being laced with fentanyl, and you don't know what you're really consuming. And the ease for it. I meet often with youth groups that go visit my office in Washington. They take, either through high schools or even some middle schools, and what they're doing with their students. And what I hear the most about, their top issue, is vaping, is the access to that, is all the students consuming it, and the lack of knowledge sometimes, or information of what they're actually consuming and what they're doing. And the risk of the thing being passed around, and it's hard to track, and the technology of it, and how attractive these companies are making it. And when you look at I think you put fentanyl and you put something like vaping in a category that it's harming our youth in so many different ways with very little ability from our side to actually do something about this. So of course we have to protect on the fentanyl. It's mainly a lot of a border issue of tackling at the ports of entry. But when you've got vaping here, you have awareness campaigns, you have to get youth involved. Now, after listening to the youth, because that's not something that, I gotta be honest with you, that we get calls in the office about. It isn't something that many adults are discussing. But you go to any of the youth councils,
and the kids are talking,
and they're talking
That's
about
right.
it, which is very telling. And it means that we have to listen to them. So now when I go to schools, and I've been to 3 schools since I got back from Washington on just Friday morning. I was in 2 schools on Friday and a school today. We bring this up to make sure that they're aware. And it's an awareness campaign that we have to push through.
I'm so glad you're doing that, and I knew you had. That's why I wanted to ask the question. As you know, I spend time with school children as well. And you know, the real issue with vapes is, A, their prevalence, they're just ubiquitous, but it's a gateway. It becomes a gateway to the next thing and the heavier drugs. And it's insidious, but that's the way that the cartels are getting our kids used to them being, you know, the customer in the long
I think you brought up a good point on the cartels. They're a multifaceted, multi-billion-dollar operation. When we have to realize that right now that the human trafficking side of their equation, of their balance sheet has gone down dramatically, like it has gone down. You can expect them to shift their efforts and shift their focus, because they're not a one-dimensional business. They are a multifaceted business, that they're in the business of making money. Run over whoever they need to run over. They have no heart. They're a bunch of animals, cruel, that care nothing about our community, and they need to be dealt with. So when we stop one side of their business, they will shift and try to get others, and our kids are a prime target for them and do not care about us or society. This is why it is truly a national security issue that we're facing.
Very well said. So on to my next question, Congressman. As you and I well know, the U.S.-Mexico border, it's not just a security issue, but it's also an economic gateway.
Yep.
In fact, Mexico is Arizona's #1 trade partner. Mexico is the largest importer and exporter for Arizona. It accounts for roughly $20 billion in bilateral trade. $10 billion of that is in copper, electronics, and aeronautics exports from Arizona to Mexico, and another $10 billion of food, mechanical, and automotive imports from Mexico to Arizona. Mm-hmm. In fact, this is a theme that is found throughout the nation. 39 American states count Mexico as their #1 or #2 trade partner. So the question is, you can applaud for that if you like. So the question is, how can we streamline trade and commerce across Arizona's border while ensuring that stricter security measures don't create unnecessary bottlenecks that hurt local businesses here?
Yeah, I think they go hand in hand. Listen, a safe and secure border leads to a greater economic prosperity for both countries. No question about it. When you know you're safe, I've talked to many, you talked about the illicit trade. That's a big aspect that a lot of people don't talk about, especially with cigarettes and these kind of, so I've talked to companies like Philip Morris and other companies, that their trains get hijacked, just like you would see in a movie, literally, of what's happening on the other side. So you've got all that happening. So a secure area of the border actually makes both sides more prosperous. When you invest more technology in the ports of entry, for example, I've been working across the aisle on this because this is another common sense bill of investing more in the ports of entry. How? Through screening process. If we can have more screening machines within the ports of entry, that speeds up the trade and the commerce, but it also helps us find more of the hard narcotics or even fentanyl. Let's remember this, the majority of the fentanyl apprehended that we intercept coming into the United States is at the ports of entry. More is coming in through the outskirts, no question about it. But the pills are small and they're easy they're not like big packages like you see in other kind of drugs. So they can be hidden in different compartments within cars and so on. So the majority of that is crossing through the ports of entry. So by enhancing that, we can also do both at the same time. Speed up the process of commerce, make it safer, and also be able to capture more of these hard narcotics at the border. We have joint inspections, for example. One aspect that was happening, and this started under the first term of President Trump, was when we had cargo being inspected by Mexican federal officials. They would be done, and then it would be inspected by U.S. federal officials immediately after that, just a few feet away from each other. Well, that doubled the amount of time, and goods were being processed in an average of 6 to 8 hours. But then we came to this agreement, why don't we do it at the same time? Simultaneous inspection of both sides of the federal government inspecting this at the same time. That dropped the wait time and the processes for about an hour. It was 60 to 70 minutes. That was the new average time for that. So again, this enhances security, but also the speed of the trade, right? So all these things were beneficial for both sides, and we've continued to see that trade and the commerce grow, benefiting both nations on that.
Focusing on the economic perspective of immigration, you were an original co-sponsor of the HIRE Act, which strengthens guest worker visa programs and addresses the national labor shortage by extending the period of stay for H-2A and H-2B visas. Thank you for that. Arizonans are no stranger to the fact that visa holders play a critical role in sustaining your workforce. You and I have many times discussed the agricultural needs, the construction needs, hospitality needs of your state. Tell us a little bit more about your thoughts around the HIRE Act and where we go from here post the HIRE Act.
Yeah, so I've visited many work sites here in Arizona that use the H-1B and the H-1A visas as well. One of the biggest frustrations with that is the annual renewal process of having to go through this process every single year to, again, process the same people, the ones that you've already trained, with no guarantee of something not going well, a technicality, and you not being able to get the same person back. So you're wasting resources in the retraining, and people have hired literally 1 to 2 full-time people within their business just to deal with the renewal process. Now, if we extended this from 1 to 3 years of legal work visas that we're talking about here, so that these companies here, in many cases farms or construction companies, can have that individual for 1 to 3 years, so extended it from 1 to 3 years, that would save the business a tremendous amount of money. It would save the process also of the applicant, the back and forth. And here's the thing, we have this idea that anybody that wants to come into the country and work, they want to come here and stay. That's not the case. A lot of people want to come here, work, and go back home. They want to be here for a season and then go back home. And many of these employers, when people want to stay here for the full year, they actually highly encourage them to say, go back home, reconnect with your family, go back and see where you're sending your money, and then you can come back and do that. But if there's an ease of coming back and forth legally, based on the work permit, when people go back home and they invest in their families, buy a home, send their kids to school, less of them want to actually make a dangerous journey to go up on the illegal route to come into the United States, or maybe potentially even immigrate because they've got what they need at home and they want to stay there. That's great. So we have to give these kind of options. Not everybody that wants to come here, it's like my family in some cases that they wanted to come here with the goal of becoming U.S. citizens. Some want to come here, work, and be able to go back home. So and this is not just on the ag or construction or the community that we're used to talking about these visas. I'm talking about high tech as well. When I go to these medical facilities, they have a shortage of workforce. Wherever you go right now, there's a shortage of workforce. That's why we need to be tackling that in a very common sense way. We have the work visa ability. We have the opportunity to give our DACA and our Dreamer students a shot at the American dream and use what we have here in front of us. We have many opportunities out there, JTED programs, CTE programs that we can invest in to build that workforce within the United States. I have another bill that will give a grant to community colleges to be able to start a construction program within the community college and also for the trades. Why? So that they can offer these kind of things. I honestly, one of the reasons that again I learned something about this is because my nephew, he's the oldest of my sister's son. He graduated high school, wasn't ready for college, smart enough to know that, didn't want to get into student loan debt or anything like that. So he, for like a year and a half, took a couple of jobs up in Alaska, fishing and doing these kind of things. And then he decided to go into construction. So now he's in a program that can help him do that. And the tuition will be waived at the end when he finds a job and does that. He's doing the best I've ever seen him do in his studies, right? Because he was never into school, let's say. But now that he's got a goal and that he's paying for it himself, all of a sudden he wakes up and he's like, I got to get this done. Why can't we use Pell Grants for that? Why couldn't we use some of the help that we're giving a lot of students, like myself and others, that you leave college with a political science degree or an arts degree? Hey, that's great, that's awesome if you're going to go pursue that. But these trades should be getting also the attention that they deserve on this.
We talk, about bringing manufacturing jobs back to America.
Yeah,
that's a fantastic idea.
Exactly.
That's a fantastic
because
idea.
when we look at,
he's not only good looking, he's really a very intelligent fellow. That's pretty damn good.
It's the socks. It's really the socks just flow up and it just. But you really, you're right. You got to look at this and say we got to have this in the common sense approach. We do want to have more of these jobs here in the U.S. We want USA made product, and that actually enhances the trade as well. But in order to do that, we have to invest in it. We have to pay attention to it. So yeah.
Great answer. So let me move on to energy. Businesses for sure and families have been feeling the effects of higher energy prices and a resulting high cost of living that acts like, as I've always called it, an invisible tax on just about everything. In fact, electricity prices have increased 30% and oil has increased 25% in the past 4 years. Now, we've also heard President Trump speak about the need to, quote unquote, unleash American energy, increasing domestic production and thus lowering prices. So my question is, what does, quote unquote, unleashing American energy look like, and what policies should Americans expect that will ease the burden on families and businesses alike?
Yeah, that's a great question. And listen, when you have high energy costs, that impacts everything. It impacts gas, on how you bring your product from point A to point B. It impacts electricity. It impacts the construction of things. It impacts everything around us gets impacted by the high energy cost. That's one of the main reasons that we saw the inflation that we saw the last 4 years or so skyrocket, because of the high cost of energy and the government's just burdensome regulations on businesses, the high taxes to the high energy costs through extensive permitting. So we can do a great job within the United States to produce our own energy. If we can go back on a lot of this permitting that is being held up, and we have permitting reform, and we can actually speed up the process and lower on the regulation and allow businesses to go and create these jobs. People often look at government for a solution. In many cases, government has to step out, and the number one role of government is to protect its citizens, to protect its community, public safety. And that includes, of course, police officers and the public safety that we all know, but also in terms of how business operates. It's making sure, and that's through the courts, and that's also through legislation, that government sets a level playing field, an even level playing field. However, when the government steps over and starts over-regulating on businesses and on this industry, we're going to feel it immediately. So we've got several ideas on this. We led with this last Congress in H.R. 1, which was the number one priority of reducing all this regulation. Again, we can look at this big bill approach. One of the things that I've been working on with colleagues on both sides on this is to tackle the energy issue along with the affordable housing issue, for example. Making sure that it's streamlined in a much better way and that we can produce what we need here domestically. We're the copper state. One of the bills that we've been working on from my side is adding copper and many other minerals to the critical mineral list from the Department of Energy. This speeds up the process in which it makes copper also production more available and eligible for many of the benefits out there for that kind of production. If we can invest more in what we have here in a clean way, in a clean energy way, that we can actually be protective of the environment as well, we can do both. We live in a beautiful state that we have to protect the environment, and that doesn't have to be done at the expense of business. We can do both, and making sure that business operates in the way that meets the demand that we have in this nation while protecting our amazing environment as well.
Now, as a Democrat, which you like to remind me.
You're a Democrat? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Enjoy it while you can, young fella.
For how much longer are you going to be a Democrat?
Oh, man.
Got a lot of Democrat friends in the audience here. So.
I have to admit that the shift towards the Republican Party in this last election was unlike anything I've ever witnessed. 48 of the 50 states leaned red. And I did a lot of soul searching. I knew it was going to happen, and I was trying to tell my friends in the Democratic Party that it was coming. I knew that I believed that President Trump would win. I did not think it would be such an amazing win. I did not think it would be this drastic. The man closed out all of the 6 swing states, including Arizona, within hours, and decidedly won them. It was not even a toss-up. And as old as I am, I'm used to, some of these swing states, for 2 or 3 weeks, they're recounting and counting and recounting. There was no question. So, the MAGA movement over the past decade, I think, stemmed from 2 things. One, Democrats believed that Donald Trump, if he won, would win because he was talking to ignorant Americans. And I kept saying, no, it's because he's talking to ignored Americans. And there's a big difference between ignorant and being ignored. And we got to learn that. I think we might have gotten a lesson. The second one, kind of the shift toward MAGA, I think stems from, frankly, just a frustration with jobs being shifted overseas, manufacturing sector really hollowed out. Resultantly, Trump and the Republicans have advocated for bolstering manufacturing sectors here, bringing jobs back home, producing American-made products right here, and even imposing tariffs. So the question is, how is this all going to be carried out in practice? And from a policy-making standpoint, where you're the one making the sausage, what is Congress, what role will Congress play, and how do you envision the next several months? Because what happens now, I firmly believe, is going to set a trajectory for the next at least 2 to 3 decades.
Yeah, I strongly believe that. I think we've hit a fork on the road as a nation, as policymakers, as in many cases, how do you campaign? All these things have come to a halt. I think the public was tired of the talking and very little action from both sides. And that is absolutely true. When you see the national debt increasing under the power of both sides, and you can go on and on this list. And I got to tell you, one of the advantages, and I mean that, one of the many advantages of being a dad of 6, I know my wife is watching, so I got to emphasize that, one of the many advantages, which I love being a dad of 6, especially in bedtime, it's just so easy and so much fun. It's that I get to be, every time that I come home, Javier, I'm either at a birthday party or 2 or 3. I'm coaching flag football. I drop off at school. I do all those daily activities that all of you are involved in. I see you out there at Costco or Bash's or whatever, right? So I get out there and I hear from people. I go and sit down at a restaurant and I purposely choose somewhere where people can come up and talk. And sometimes I sit there for a couple hours, and not because I'm eating for 2 hours, although it may look like it sometimes, but it's because I want to listen from people. People that will not come to a political event. They won't go to maybe a chamber breakfast. They won't do any of that. But they'll come and talk, and they'll get that one chance to ask me questions and for me to hear their feedback. And people have been tired of feeling ignored. especially the population that was mainly responsible for electing President Trump the second time, which is a lot of Hispanic men, right? That they, for the first time, they've told me this personally, feel like they were listened to. That there's no transparency of my tax dollars to where they're going. All these programs are being funded all over the world and all over the country, but our own communities are lagging. I mean, all this, being tired of just big government and a lot of talk and no action. So when you look at that and you realize that here came someone that exposed all that and called it for what it was and didn't care for the heat that he was taking for it, made a lot of people uncomfortable, and here we are again with a second Trump administration. And listen, he hit the ground running on a lot of this through executive order. That's what also Biden did and what the President Trump had done before as well. And that's all, that helps an administration take off in a very quick and aggressive way, delivering on the promises that they made and he made on this. Here's the thing, Congress's role now is to be able to codify the things that we need codified into law. Because if this becomes a ping pong game between executive orders from administration to administration, that's no way for a nation of the size and the prominence of the United States of America to live. We should not just be doing it in that order and in that fashion. I understand the purpose of it, and I support what's been done. However, we need to look now at Congress and say, where does the spending need to go? We need to reduce this long-term spending spree that Congress has been on in the United States, or else we won't. That's not a sustainable approach. So this is where Congress comes in, and they play the role, the power of the purse, for example, which is vested in the House. International presence and relations, which is more living on the Senate side. All these things is the power that Congress has, and we should be very cognizant of that job and also listening to what the American people want right now.
You talked about government spending. So on that topic, look, regardless of our own opinions or whether we think it's overreach or not, what do you make of DOGE, and do you think that DOGE has the potential to make real impact?
Yeah,
is that the right way, that the approach that we should be taking to this issue, thorny issue of government spending?
The issue of government spending has been out of control and something that people go to Washington talking about, and then they get there and do nothing about it. That's just the reality of it. Whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, and I think you know this, but in this district, probably this audience, you have 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat, and 1/3 independent. That is a reflection of the state of Arizona in many ways. And when you look at these politicians for generations that have just said, yeah, we need to cut wasteful spending, we need to cut spending, then they go to Washington and they get bit by the Washington bug of spending money. And the no pressure of actually balancing any of it, and just the ability to print more money if it comes to that. That needs to stop. That absolutely needs to stop. In the last few years, 4 or 5 years, especially since COVID, that the spending of government has skyrocketed and the accountability has plummeted. Why? Because it was all done through emergency declarations, and then you couldn't question it. Because if you did, I mean, the world was trying to find a new normal, and as the dust is settling, all the COVID era spending, not only spending on COVID issues, but just all the programs that skyrocketed because under the umbrella, reason, whatever you want to call it, of the COVID approach, is that they did not peel back. That's why I always say, and I think it's important that the audience here knows that. My team knows that whenever one bill gets presented to me to see if we co-sponsor, vote for it, we're being briefed on it, and there are a lot of bills that go through this, the first question that I need answered for my team is this the proper role of the federal government? Or is this going to grow the federal government? Because I want anybody here to point out to me the last time that the federal government was given a certain type of authority and they themselves regulated out of it in due time. That never happens. Why? Because whatever the federal government steps in, they never want to peel back. So my question is, why isn't this being solved by the private sector, by nonprofits? Heck, even local government. I see County Supervisor Steve Christie here. Why can't these things be solved at a local level where we all have that direct connection with that? Why does it have to be solved by Washington? Because whatever the federal government steps in and takes, that's not going to go back. So all this to say that my approach to the DOGE effort, which I'm a member of the caucus in DOGE, is to make sure that government spending is being held accountable. And that we can tackle and identify the waste, the fraud, the abuse within the government that is not reaching its intended purpose. And when you do that, you're going to find areas that don't need this funding anymore. You're going to find programs that are not meeting their standards, programs that are outdated and no longer necessary, programs that are out there bidding and paying 3-4 times the amount that they should be paying for this for just the irresponsibility and laziness of the federal government. What you're also going to find are things that work. Things that work like how do we make sure that more people have the right access to Pell Grants? How do we make sure that Title I schools and designated schools have the right funding and the right accountability for that? How do we make sure that Alzheimer's gets proper investment, which is one of the most rising diseases here in this community as well? How do we make sure that the things that are working, we can potentially even do a better job at investing in that while shaving off areas that are not working for us, especially the money going abroad, the money leaving the United States? That I'm part of 3 different subcommittees in the Appropriations Committee. One, it's transportation, is the committee that's one. The other one is the committee that is responsible for the money that leaves our country, the taxpayer dollars that leave our country. And then I'm also the vice chair of the Homeland Security Committee. And we have to make sure that all this is being held accountable. People in Washington don't remember this, and they keep even misspeaking on it. Oh, it's federal dollars, federal spending. The federal government is paying for this. Friends, the federal government has no money except the money that comes from this room. It's your dollars, it's the dollars of the business community that is being out there, and we have to hold that accountable on whatever we use for it. So DOGE for me is a way to come in and be able to look at this. Now, I'm saying my way of looking at it. I'm saying my approach on it. Your representative who reports to you all, who works for you all, that's how I'm seeing it. What are the areas that are not working that we need to shave off on, and what are the areas that are working that we can actually do a deeper look at what we can do to invest there.
And by the way, you were on appropriations like your first term?
That's right. I was the only freshman.
I don't know of anybody who's ever accomplished that. The first term you're already on appropriations.
We worked hard, and we have a great legacy in this district. Jim Colby, who many of you knew, of being an appropriator as well in this, a Republican, and then Ann Kirkpatrick, a Democrat in this district as well, right before me, also an appropriator. So this district has that reputation. And then our Senator Sinema was in the Appropriations Committee her last 2 years in the Senate. Now that she's gone, now we have one appropriator in the state, and that's me. So I carry that responsibility with a lot of pride.
Very cool. So, Congressman, I want to discuss kind of in broader terms the state of American politics. Mm-hmm. Something I think that every American is concerned with today. Over the past decade, we have witnessed the anarchy, the divisiveness, the flat-out hatred that has emanated from Washington, D.C. and permeated every state house in this nation. It has gotten to the point that I think the tail is wagging the dog, with the fringes of both political parties, mine and yours, making the decisions and setting the course for the vast majority of us, who frankly, I think the vast majority of us are closer to the center. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to hear your views on the state of our politics and what we can do to ensure that the voice of the people is being heard in our nation's capital.
Yeah, you know, being in the United States Congress, being a representative there in this seat, it's very unique because we are dealing with national issues, federal and international implications. Obviously, 435 people in the whole nation get to be part of this body that governs the most powerful nation on the face of the earth. A big responsibility. At the same time, there are only 9 in Arizona that do that. And only 2 here in this area that are able to do that. So as much as it is a big picture position, I run this and I manage my leadership here in this district to listen to the local community, to be able to get the ideas there. My way of being able to lead on this and fight off all the noise that is going around is by keeping these issues as local as possible, to make sure that we're addressing the needs that we have here in our community. It wouldn't do you any good if I just go to Washington and you get bit, and I get bit by the Washington bug up there and then stay there over the weekends, and Laura wouldn't approve that either, by the way. Laura would beat you to it, pulling me back here, but that wouldn't serve our community at all, because I want to be here listening to what's keeping you all awake at night, which is what my job is to go represent. So I wish one person could, I think there is impact you can make, but when I got to Washington, I realized this. If I ask you all here, name me 3 to 5 people on the right that you know. You can name 3 to 5, and there's going to be 90% common denominator there. I ask you the same thing on the people on the left, you're going to name the same group of people as well. Why? Because these are the people that are hungry for the TV time. These are the people that when something happens, they run to the cameras, and that's who they go talk to. What I go run to is all of you, is come back here and actually get to work, roll up our sleeves. So as some are focusing on the politics of it, and they feed off and win off division, and when I say division, I'm not talking about Democrat and Republican only. If you look at what has happened on both sides internally, you can see division within the different sides and the facets as well. So what we got to do is just focus on the issues that solve problems. If we become a problem-solving group of people that want to just do that at every level, I think we're going to be in much better shape. And my way to keep centered and keep focused and keep my feet on the ground is by keeping all this as local as possible. What's impacting my community? The message was loud and clear. Border security, immigration issues, also the economy was a huge one for us. Healthcare is big for this area as well. Veterans is absolutely a huge issue with over 80,000 veterans in our district living here. The 9th largest veteran population in the whole nation, right here in CD6. I know who I work for. And I come back home every weekend to be reminded of that. And in my mind, that's how at least I'm working towards finding common ground and solutions.
Fantastic response. As you know, John McCain was one of my closest advisors and a dear friend, and John introduced me to Jeff Flake, and Jeff Flake introduced me to Kirsten Sinema. Kirsten Sinema introduced me to you, and I see a common thread of just a down-homeness, if there's such a term, a willingness and a proclivity to listen to the people at home and judge and decide and cast your fate with the people who put you in the office. And I got to tell you that you haven't lost that, and I hope you never do.
Well, if John McCain couldn't convince you to be a Republican, I don't think I will. Yeah.
He used to joke he was running out of time, but anyway. 2 personal questions before we go to the audience. The first one. You're a very busy dad. I just mentioned a while ago that I've interrupted several flag football games while you're coaching. You mentioned you've got six children. You have a very busy job. As a father myself, I'm aware of the negotiation, the wrangling, the begging, the babysitting that is involved in raising children. I only raised 3.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Congress.
I'm coming. You're raising 6. So the question is, who is it easier to wrangle, to negotiate with? Is it a member of Congress or one of the kids?
Oh, boy.
What's easier, the kids or Congress?
This is going to get me in trouble. This is being recorded.
Either way.
Either way. There's a lot of similarities. There are a lot of similarities. The main one, I think, is the need to find common ground and realize that you're not always going to get everything you want. If you get, especially as the kids have gotten older, it's not so much like, hey, go do this, period. Now there's questions. Now there's, the why and, and stepping out of hearings because I'm getting calls because they're fighting between them and they want me to take a side. And I'm like, I just stepped out of a hearing for this. But, tell your daughter that and then tell, mommy is not okay. Well, so life is real in that sense for me as well. But when you realize, either with family or in Congress, that you have to stand up for what you believe, you have to fight for what you believe, you have to stand up for it. And listen, we do things like this at the House. We have one main television area, one TV, and they all have to negotiate to be able to take turns there. And it's at the point where we don't interfere. You want to play Xbox while you are, and you want to watch a movie next, where you want to go read, and they all have a system that they take turns on. That it's complicated, we don't understand it, but most of the time it saves problems. They came up with this themselves. Would it be easier to just get them each a little TV or a little device and they all go their separate ways? Sure, but that wouldn't teach them the art of negotiating and what they need to do. So I think if more people in Congress and then, will understand that concept, I think we'll be better served.
But come on, man, don't you wish that with some members of Congress you could say, I want you to go up to your bedroom and I want you to think about what you just did.
There's no grounding there.
And then y esta en español. Aquí te viene una de las buenas, compa.
All right, let's go.
Aquí, okay, nos vamos a quitar de la duda. So the question is, Luis Miguel or Vicente Fernandez?
Oh, Vicente Fernandez, man, come on.
Míralo.
Come on, yeah.
All right, well, continuing that, rock and roll or
El
country?
Chente.
Rock and roll or country?
Country.
Country?
Yeah. And mainly because Laura loves country. She's listening to it all the time. And
I'm a George Strait guy myself.
if she's happy, I'm happy. So let's go. Country all the
Attaboy,
way.
that's the way to live. I'll tell you, let me close this out. I want to dangle my mic, and I want to say a few things, if you don't mind, before we conclude this thing. And I know we didn't talk about this, but I want you to bear with me.
Sure.
We haven't known each other, frankly, that long. We had the pleasure of meeting maybe a couple of years ago, and I made it a point to try to work with you and come see you and seek your counsel and advice. You've always taken the call. And I gotta talk about something that you told me about some time back. Juan shared with me a story about a conversation he had with his father. And his father, it went something like this. His father said to Juan, "Mijo, where else in the world could we have our story? We came to the U.S., we learn English, immerse in the culture, become U.S. citizens. I drive a bus most of my life, but now my son is a United States congressman. Where else in the world? Nowhere, mijo. Only here in America is that possible." That's a story that Juan shared with me a few meals ago. And Juan's approach to leadership embodies that kind of pragmatism and results-driven governance that our country desperately needs. He has been ranked as the most bipartisan member of Congress by Georgetown University. He has proven time and time again in his short time in Congress that he prioritizes solutions over sound bites and action over ideology. His ability to bridge the divide between parties is not just commendable, it's essential in today's political climate. He understands that economic prosperity starts with empowering entrepreneurs, strengthening our workforce, and ensuring that all people, all Americans, have the tools they need to thrive. Beyond policy, to me, Juan represents something that's even more profound. He represents hope. I have less days ahead of me than I do behind me. And I believe that there's hope yet for the American dream. And when I meet young guys like Juan, despite the socks, I'm reminded that there is a new generation of leaders that can rise above the noise and deliver results for all of us. It's that hope that bipartisanship is not a relic of the past. It can be a strategy for the future. I know that Juan will continue to be a voice of reason on Capitol Hill. He's not just a congressman. He's a testament to what is still possible in America. And discussions like this, they're probably needed more now than they ever have been, because our nation is at a transit point. These next 4 years will determine the direction of our country from so many things, from immigration to manufacturing to trade to energy, and it goes on. But now is not the time to retreat. It's not the time to go into petty partisanship or polarization. Now it's time for Democrats and Republicans, young and old, to work together and find the common ground. Now is the time to address the issues our country faces head on as Americans. The decisions being made in Washington today will reverberate throughout not only this nation, but the entire globe. We need people who are out there looking out for us. They're outnumbered, that's for sure. But I believe that with determination, we can continue to be the superpower into the 21st century. We can still be the land of freedom and opportunity. And I believe that no matter where you are on the political divide, no matter where you are on that spectrum, you have a role to play. Your voice matters, perhaps now more than ever. And I'm delighted to meet young people like Juan who believe that as well. Bipartisanship, in my opinion, is not a noun, it's a verb. Bipartisanship depends on collaboration, commitment, a little comedy, and certainly action and execution. And an understanding that no matter our differences, the one thing we do have in common is that our children will inherit the future that we are creating today. The rise in partisan acrimony and hatred has left too many of us Americans feeling alienated. Yet as we heard today, there's room for collaboration. So as we wrap up, let's remember that true progress demands dialogue, mutual respect, and partnership. We all have an obligation to our constituents, in our case, our businesses, and to our children to come together and solve the pressing challenges that we face. So I thank you all again for making time to be with us. And I ask you please to rise and help me thank our dear friend, your Congressman Juan Ciscomani.